going to share. Can everyone see my my video here?
Do you have the audio engaged?
Yes, I do.
Okay,
Yep.
good. All right. If everybody can mute themselves,
Yeah.
and I can mute you if you can't do it.
Oh, good.
Excellent. So if everybody's ready, I will play this and then we'll go through any questions. All right, welcome everyone. Welcome this evening. Welcome to our live stream. My name is Nicole Carpenter. I'm the Director of Programs and Education here at the Westport Museum for History and Culture. Thank you again for joining us tonight. This is our Tuesday Treasure Program. We hold this program once a week on Tuesdays. We hold them at 6 p.m. So join us next week for more highlights from our collection. Tonight we are focusing on a couple of items celebrating spring and the soon to come summer, when hopefully we all will be able to gather together and have some garden parties. So tonight we are going to talk a little bit about tea, garden parties, kind of this era of big kind of celebrations. Do know that you can ask questions anytime throughout the program. Feel free to type them into the comments below. I will answer them or do my best to answer them at the end. If I don't have an answer for you, I will, of course, go into our records and consult my other colleagues, and we will get back to you. We will comment down in the comments below for the answer so that anyone can see the answer if we have to tell you later. All right. So tonight we will get started. We are going to start in 1830. Now, 1830 is a time when the Northeast is growing. The United States is growing really rapidly as well. This is definitely a boom in the economy. And as a result, people are able to buy larger homes. They're able to have more lush gardens. And that's where we see some of the first kind of very large garden parties. Now, the first item I'd like to show you is from this period, not the 1830s, but a little bit later in the 1850s, 1880s era. And that is actually this item. Now, this item, if I can show it very well on the camera here, is a fan. It has mother of pearl on the handle, and it has a lithograph printed image on both the front and the back there. So you can see there are ladies here on the back enjoying a very lush garden, and then on the front there is a pair or a trio actually of figures, one man in the middle and then two women here on the sides, and also this kind of lush background. Now, fans like this, put that back very, very gently. Fans like this were obviously used at a garden party to literally fan yourself, to cool yourself. It was also a way to show the very fashionable accessories for the ladies of the day. And there is this idea of there being a secret language of fans. In 1827, so just prior to kind of this boom in the United States, this economic boom, there is a Parisian fan maker named Delaroy, and he comes up with a very clever way to market his fans. Now, fans had fallen a little bit out of favor by the 1800s. It was considered very, very wealthy to be able to afford one of these fans, and it had fallen out of favor. So Delaroy decided that he would print up a pamphlet, that he would advertise this secret language of fans and how ladies could use this secret language to communicate with their partner across the ballroom. They might be able to flirt or kind of be coy with their significant other or their hopeful significant other. One of these was to hold your fan against your left ear, and it would be a sign that you meant to say, I wish to be rid of you. And he prints this pamphlet. There are about 20 or so specific ways to hold your fan, to hold it against the body, or to hold it in a certain way. Now, this is debated on whether this secret language was actually used. Now, it wasn't very secret since it was distributed widely, so it was a bit of a problem to be able to communicate with someone secretly by fan since everyone knew. It can also lead to a little bit of misunderstanding if someone else across the room reads your message that you didn't intend for them to read. And then also it causes a bit of a problem when you actually want to use the fan for its intended use of cooling yourself in a crowded room. So it is debated whether this language was used or not. Now, fans were most definitely used to communicate in courting rituals. Being able to hide your smile behind a fan, being able to wave someone away with it. So it definitely was a tool of communication, but whether or not they used Delaroy's very specific language is debatable. But these fans are really, really beautifully made, and they were definitely something that were used by these very fancy, wealthy aristocracy kind of leveled women at these garden parties. Now, if we jump forward to around 1870, 1870 is what Mark Twain coined it as the Gilded Age. Again, this time of explosive growth in industry in the United States. We think of people such as Carnegie and Vanderbilt. We also think of these families that kind of grow to be empires. Now, with this huge growth in these families, they, of course, build these beautiful, beautiful homes. We think of the Newport mansions, and they're able to kind of sustain these large estates. And with these large estates, of course, come these large garden parties, these really, really large events with hundreds of people. And that's what most people think of when they think of a garden party, these really, really extravagant Gilded Age kind of parties. Now, one of these items that I'd like to show you, I'm not going to pick this item up because it is very, very fragile, but you can see our teapot on the back edge here. It is a ceramic teapot, or actually a coffee pot. It is a ceramic coffee pot with some gold detailing on it. Now, coffee was extremely popular in North America, even during this period. But we see, especially in Europe, tea being the favored beverage. Of course, the royal family still holds tea garden parties to this day, and it's still very considered a very British thing to like tea. Now, tea was originally drank in China. There's evidence of it being present in the 2nd century BC, so a very, very long history of tea in China. It, of course, migrates through Japan and the Middle East, and then it becomes really popular, really, really very widely distributed in Europe by the 17th century. We all know the history of tea with the Boston Tea Party, the War for Independence. We also know that the British specifically have a triangle trade in relation to tea, not specifically for tea, but for the sugar that sweetens their tea. Of course, we know the sugar comes from the Caribbean, and of course was involved with the slave trade as well, unfortunately. But it does pop up in these garden parties. It's very fashionable to drink tea, especially as we move much, much further on into the 1900s with the Gilded Age. Our teapot is from the 1880s, our coffee pot is from the 1880s. And the way that you can tell it's a coffee pot versus a teapot is actually the height of the teapot itself. A teapot tends to be much rounder and shorter, whereas a coffee pot is typically taller and more slender. Our coffee pot. I want it to be tea. Our coffee pot is a little bit of a mixture of the two, and you don't see those design elements really come into play until around 1900. So this is just a bit beforehand, about 1880, but this is indeed a coffee pot. Another item that I wanted to show you were these beautiful shoes. Let me bring one a little bit closer to you. It is made of white leather, or kid, it is sometimes called. It has pearlescent buttons all down the side with this kind of scalloped edging, and it also has this very short heel. It does not have a stiletto heel. A stiletto heel would not have been popular during the 1900s, but a very low heel like this, it was very easy to walk, at least relatively easy to walk. And also the width of the heel, it being wider like this, made it much easier to walk on soft surfaces like grass at a garden party. Now, the other thing I wanted to show you, and this does bring us to the moment, to today, actually. The other thing that ladies of the 1900s were wearing, along with these shoes, are hats. Now, at the time, again, in the Gilded Age, women had very long hair, but it was not left down. It would have been piled up on top of their head. Think of the Gibson girl and that silhouette of this very voluminous hair, braided and put up on the head to create this very large hairstyle. Now, to go along with these hairstyles, let me grab my item. They were using these huge hats. Now, this is a Gainsborough or picture hat. And this would have been placed on top of the hair and would have been secured with hat pins or hairpins. Earlier in the 1900s, so around 1908 to about 1910 rather, these hats tended to be much taller, really tall, with lots of feathers and lots of ornamentation. You can see our hat has some artificial flowers and lace, as well as a black velvet trim. By 1913 to about 1915, the hats tend to look like this. They're much flatter. You can see that this is not a terribly tall hat. So they shift to be just as wide, just as many decorations, but not nearly as tall. So a much flatter style like this. This hat reminds us today, actually, of a hat that you may have seen in a popular film. If you've seen Titanic, you will have seen the character Rose boarding the ship, and she has a hat very similar to the one I just showed you. Now, again, this brings us to today. April 14th is the anniversary of the Titanic actually colliding with the iceberg in the North Atlantic. So please do, while you're enjoying our broadcast tonight, do remember the ship that went down and all of the people that were destined to board the ship, but also go down with the ship. I encourage you to go and research this event a bit more and remember this event today. Now, on to our last 3 items. We have 3 more. As we move forward just a bit, still in the Gilded Age, right around 1917, we're actually going to come much closer to home, right in Westport. 1917 is the year that Westporter Friedrich E. Lewis throws a really grand garden party in Westport. Now, Mr. Lewis was a millionaire of the time. He was fairly shy, a little bit mysterious. He threw a huge party, actually as a fundraiser for World War I. The United States had just entered the war, and it was meant to bring all of his friends, other investors, some competitors in to raise some funds for the war effort. Now, at this party, there were many, again, well-known celebrities of the time, vaudeville actors. Harry Houdini was present at the party, as well as I know A. Vanderbilt was present as well. And many of the things that you see on the table would have been shown or worn at this party as well. Now, 3 years later, in 1920, Mr. Lewis is also very well known today in Westport because of this. He rents a cottage on his property called Wakeman Cottage to a very well-known couple. He rents this cottage to F. Scott Fitzgerald and his wife, Zelda. And if you were with us on Friday, if you weren't, you can always go back on Facebook and see one of our archived videos. We were very lucky to host author Richard Webb, or Deej, as he's known. And he has been researching the Gatsby connections in Westport. So I highly encourage you to go and watch that video. And if you're lucky enough to get a copy of his book, Boats Against the Current, I definitely would recommend it for a read to learn a little bit more about how Westport influenced Scott Fitzgerald to maybe base a little bit of his story on our town. Now, in the 1920s, if F. Scott and Zelda had been present at this party, and again, many notable people of the time would have been present at this 1917 party, they might have worn some of these things on the table. Now, the first is this hat. Now, this is a lady's cloche. It is made of pale pink cotton felt. And this is very, very reminiscent. I'm sure many of you associate this with a flapper. It's definitely something of that period. It has this beautiful kind of ribbon detailing. It would have been worn very, very close to the head. And this is in very, very stark contrast to that large hat we were seeing before. Hats definitely tend to be much, much smaller, much closer to the head. They would have been something resting on the hair, but much, much smaller as we move into the 1920s. The ladies would have been wearing a cloche hat such as that, but the men most likely would have been wearing something like this. Now, this is a boater or a skimmer hat. It is made of straw, and it also has a ribbon here on the side. You can see that it has this lovely little bow. Now, this is a men's semi-formal hat. It would have been worn with something like a blazer or a lounge suit. And I wanted to read something to you that I found very, very humorous. In a book for Manners for Men that was written by a Mrs. Humphrey, she actually notes something about these boater hats and how they are to be worn in very specific ways. For a morning walk in the park in summer, the straw hat or low hat and tweed suit are as correct as the black coat and silk hat. It must be remembered that a straw hat or low hat cannot be worn with a black coat of any kind. If he goes to a garden party in a frock coat and straw hat, he is condemned more universally than if he had committed some crime. This is a very serious hat, at least a very serious etiquette in wearing this hat. This is something that you see a lot of men wearing during sporting events, going to the beach, and of course going to these garden parties. Later on in the 1920s and 30s, it is worn by women. It's actually popularized by Coco Chanel. She actually loves the skimmer hat around 1910, and she makes it very popular for women. Now, the last item that I have for you all tonight is a metal purse. I'll show it to you here on the table. This purse, again, I have to bring it a bit closer so you can see. This is a mesh purse. It is made of metal as well as beads. It has some fringing here on the bottom. And this would have been worn, maybe not with our specific cloche hat, but it definitely would have been an accessory of the same time period. It, of course, has this lovely floral pattern within its beading. And you can see that its handle as well is made of a metal chain. And this was something very, very popular in the 1920s. Something very eye-catching, something that would have been worn by these ladies going to garden parties, but also just out on the town, going to a dance or something like that. These hats remain in popularity until right around World War II, when, of course, there are a lot of shortages in metal towards the war effort. So these purses fall out of favor around the 1940s. So those are our items that that I have hopefully shown to you very well. I hope you.
So that was our video. This was recorded back in 2020, and I do want to point out that we have obviously gotten a much better camera since then. So the item that I do have for you today is actually the one item that I did not show very close to the camera, which was our coffee pot, which I loved to mistakenly call a teapot. So this was the only piece that we were not able to show a little bit more closely. So this is our coffee pot. You can see some of the detailing, that gold detailing around here, and you can see that it has this this much more elongated body than a teapot. I also have the cover for you, of course. So if you have any questions, I am more than happy to answer those. Anything about what I showed in the video, the coffee pot, anything in our collection, anything that I can answer, or if you have an item to show yourself, I would love to take a peek at it.
So I had no idea the men's hat was such a snafu if you screw that up. So it's pretty damning from what I heard. To wear a black blazer and that hat.
Mm-hmm. Very, very specific etiquette to wear specific pieces. And it's the same for women, not for that specific hat, but there were specific instances and circumstances and colors that you were meant to wear things with. It was a very serious affair to go to these very sociable these social events, these garden parties and these tea parties and things like that. Very, very serious, especially when you want to be presenting yourself in a very specific way.
You there, Jason?
Where was that fan made? Where were these artifacts made?
It depends on the piece. So that fan is actually a French-made fan. I don't know of the specific place in France, but I do know that it was a French-made piece. All of the pieces that we showed during that program, including this teapot, have a relation to a Westport owner. That fan was actually donated by a Mrs. Fred Mayer here in Westport, either owned by the family or something that they came across in their collections.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Where was the origin of the tea party? Is that England, pretty much?
Yeah, it's well, we know that tea itself, one of the earliest instances is from the Han Dynasty in China. And of course, China has a very, very long tradition of growing tea and using tea very much in a ceremonial way. When we think of a tea ceremony, that's definitely from China and Japan. Some of the earliest ceremonial pieces are from those countries and those cultures. When we think about a tea party today with kind of hors d'oeuvres and kind of as a social event, less of a religious connotation, that's when it moves to the Middle East, but also largely when it moves to Europe. mostly in the 17th century, 17th and 18th centuries.
Holly says that she has a tea set that has a cocoa pot, coffee pot, and teapot. It is by Spode from the 1920s.
Uh-huh.
Fantastic. That's fantastic.
You should make Long Island iced tea in that. Lindy, do you have any questions?
No. No, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it.
Good, good.
Yeah, we should. Holly just said we're hoping to host the tea party again that we usually do. You're invited, Nicole.
Excellent. I would love to come.
Okay.
I won't wear any of our collection pieces, but I'll see if I can find a big hat.
You need to bring me a fascinator to wear.
Yeah.
Deanna, did you have any questions?
No, thank you though for
Fantastic.
asking. Mhm.
So you have another one coming up, right? It's going to be on antique toys.
Yes, we have a presentation in August on tin toys. We have a collection of these wonderful kind of, it's a variety of different pieces. I won't give any of them away, but some of them are quite old, and they're all, I have a really deep love for all of them. They're really fabulous.
Great. Okay, for all of you who don't know, Nicole is getting married next month. Is that correct?
Oh,
In September, that's right. the
September,
beginning of
yes.
September.
Oh.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Very exciting. You'll have 3 kids soon enough with gray hair like me.
Not too soon.
Don't be in a hurry. Okay, well, thank you so much. I really learned a lot, so hopefully everybody else did. And
Yes.
thank you for presenting.
Thank you.
Of course, of course.
All right, we will see you in August, okay?
Thank you so much, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Hey, Jason,
Yes.
did you hear that I became a great grandmother yesterday?